Last week, 8 people converged on a small crab tree in central St. Catharines and picked its branches clean of fruit. A few days before that, dozens of people gathered at a local restaurant for a canning swap and traded 161 home preserves, and strangers became friends. And a few months before that, a woman was nearly brought to tears. And believe it or not, they all have something in common. These were all people who have become engaged in their community. They were brought together for a common cause or purpose, sharing experiences with like-minded people. Even the woman who started tearing up. Now, I am not known for making people cry, but my alter ego, Catherine, clearly has a knack for it. Earlier this year, I worked on behalf of a local citizens committee, and I was tasked with trying to generate interest in a local municipality's sustainability strategy. The only way that this strategy, which was the municipality's long-term plan for economic, social, and cultural well-being would work, is if people bought into it, if they felt that it was theirs and they had a say in shaping it. The committee could have easily taken, oh, and I missed some of my slides here, so we'll just, William Ross, we're more alike than you know. And maybe. Okay, well then good, that makes it easy. So no slides, so that means you just have to keep looking at me. So the committee could have easily taken the usual tack, which would have been to put an ad in the local newspaper filled with randomly capitalized words and bureaucratic jargon, and it would have fulfilled any legal requirement that the municipality had to let people know that this new government policy document was in the works. And they could have left it at that. But they didn't. Instead, surveys were created and residents were encouraged to take them and give their ideas on what they thought would make their city more sustainable. They were asked what their priorities were. Were they more concerned about the economy or were they more concerned about climate change? So we got the input, and sure, it could have been easily packaged in this neat and tidy document. But who the heck was going to read this thing except policy wonks or people desperate for a cure for insomnia? And really what we needed was people to feel ownership for them. We needed them to read what was on the pages of this document, to want to live and achieve the goals on its pages. And we needed them to feel like they could make their community better. And what we really needed was someone to inspire them and engage with them. So it started with presenting the strategy in an unconventional way. The municipality published it to look like a novella with handwritten notes and doodles in the margins. And what this did was it made it look like the most well-loved, well-read book you'd ever seen. Like if you saw it on a park bench, like someone had forgotten it there, you would want to pick it up and start reading it too. And on the inside cover were the words, "This book belongs to Catherine." But who was Catherine? And no matter how good we made this thing look, I mean, and no matter how many people we got to read it, how do you get people to keep this with them and to continue talking about it with others? I mean, after all, this is still a government policy, and you know what that saying is about lipstick and a pig. So it was up to the book's mysterious owner, Catherine. And she was born basically from going out and talking to people and asking them, how do you want to be engaged? And believe me, no one said, we want to have a politician or bureaucrat tell us what to do. They wanted to hear from someone who was one of them, and that was Catherine. Catherine was you. She was your friend and your neighbor, your brother, your sister, your mother, and your father. She wasn't just the every woman. She was everyone in order to be able to engage with anyone and sell sustainability to this community. And for 2 months, I was her. Now, her story isn't much different from many people who grew up in this particular municipality. She was born and raised here. Her siblings left in search of better paying jobs elsewhere. Her father raised his 3 kids on a paycheck from the local automotive plant. Catherine was in her early 30s and she tried college for a year, but it didn't work out. So she had been waiting tables ever since. And she was earning a decent living, but really starting to feel unfulfilled, slinging pasta at the local Italian restaurant. She had an artistic streak, and in her spare time she loved to draw, but she really wanted to be able to do something more with that. She lived in her parents' basement, and really yearned for something more meaningful. She just recently heard about this word, sustainability, didn't know a whole lot about it, but she was curious. So she began to find out, because despite not knowing much, she knew this much. It was important to learn about it, and it was important to try it on for size, because her future and her community's future depended on it. So we started out on this journey of self-discovery and sustainability. And we did what anyone would do in the same situation. We got ourselves a Facebook page, we got ourselves a Twitter feed so we could broadcast to the world everything that we were doing. And we got a blog so that we could work out our thoughts on sustainability. And for me, it was fun to pretend that I was a sustainability newbie and that this concept that had been important to me for years was brand new and I was looking at it with fresh eyes again. For the committee, it was critical to get residents to be inspired to take their own sustainability journey if they hadn't already. It was important to get to see someone who was just like them, making choices that weren't easy, but they were necessary. It was important that they relate and be inspired as a result, and to start talking about sustainability and do some introspection on what they too could do to make their city and their lives more sustainable and better. So, as Catherine, I blogged about how her car broke down. She couldn't afford the repairs, and she had to trade in her keys for a bus pass. Soon after, she was able to save enough money for first and last month's rent and move out of her parents' basement. She got an apartment downtown. And then she started doing simple things that anyone could do at any given time. She started walking to work, seeing her city in a whole new way that she never could with her heavy foot driving 60 kilometers an hour down St. Paul Street and having everything zoom past in a blur. She discovered in her travels the local farmers market and started talking to farmers about the importance of buying local food. And once a week, she went vegetarian and joined the Meatless Monday movement. Her neighbors invited her on bike rides, and I'm talking real people here, not characters I made up in any storyline. People started inviting her to do things, and she told the world about it. We were engaging people in a way in which they were already communicating with each other online. A connection was being made, and people could relate to it. Positive comments started coming in. And yes, at the start, so many of them were from committee members just trying to get the dialogue started. But then Catherine started getting those invitations for the bike rides, and she got asked out for coffee, again, by real people. They started offering up advice on how to navigate the public transit system with the fewest frustrations possible. People really thought that she was real. Even friends of mine who I hadn't told what I'd been up to at work. Still, I was probably her biggest critic. I was judging her success on the number of followers that she had on Twitter and friends on Facebook and the comments left after each blog post. There weren't many, and I really was starting to feel like Catherine was just not the success that I had envisioned or that the committee had hoped for. And in time, those comments and those interactions started to slow, no matter how hard I tried to write compelling content. And that's when I got a wake-up call, actually from a previous speaker, Melissa, who told me she was kind of bored of Catherine. Catherine was too perfect. She was getting everything right on the first try. She needed to mess up. So I went back to my desk, and I made Catherine fail. She had a big falling out with her parents, who were absolutely intent on buying a gas-guzzling SUV, despite how she tried to persuade them otherwise. And people started telling her, look, it doesn't matter what you do, it's not going to make a difference. You're a dreamer, and you should just give up. And let's face it, we've all been there, right? We have all had people say things like this to us and been filled with self-doubt, and we've indeed failed. And at this point in time, when that happened to Catherine, people actually started to rally around her. They encouraged her to keep it up, and they started engaging with her. Her metrics started to improve, and she wasn't only gaining more followers on Twitter and Facebook, she was getting more comments on her blog. People wanted to be heard by her. She was relating to the people in a way that no politician or bureaucrat ever could. And all of this culminated with a coming out party for Catherine at a local coffee house a few weeks later, and I was feeling a little bit better about things, but look, I'll be honest, this was not the viral campaign that I so desperately wanted to achieve for this project. But it didn't matter, because 40 people came out. And they showed up because they knew that this was a forum where they would be listened to, where they would meet with like-minded people and share ideas, and those ideas would be taken back to City Hall, which until now had been like this fortress, this impenetrable fortress, where they had the impression nobody really wanted to listen to them. And it was a place from where they could go forth and be sustainable and put their ideas to action. Phone numbers and emails were exchanged so these conversations could carry on long after Catharine's party ended. And not long after I signed off as Catharine, still doubtful of just how much of an impact she and we had, I had people come up to me. Some of them were friends, and some of them may or may not have known what I did at work, and others were strangers, and they all said the same thing. They missed her. They thought that she was only just gaining momentum, and they just really wanted to see what she could do next and what we could do together. And then there was the woman nearly in tears, a stranger to whom I admitted one night over a fish taco that I was Catharine. And it was at that admission that she began welling up, and she told me that she loved Catharine. And, you know, I am a completely socially awkward individual. I have no problem admitting that. So to have this blubbering woman standing in front of me, I didn't know what to say to her. And I just kind of shrugged and, you know, stammered. And she just said, look, I could really relate to Catharine. I really learned a lot from her. And that was the moment. That was the moment that I realized I was putting way too much stock in numbers. And numbers, though important, are overrated. When it comes down to it, it's not the size of your audience that matters, or your score on any social media metrics. It's what you do with that audience that really counts. I mean, think about it. Is it better to have an audience of thousands who remain unmoved and disinterested in what you say and do? Or is it better to have more meaningful connections but with fewer people? Catharine, and ultimately the municipality, connected with people in a meaningful way and taught them about sustainability. And they taught me that you don't need to reach a big audience to have big impact. Thank you.